This is Matt Welsh with Spiritual Media Blog, and tonight I have a very special guest, Christina Williams.
Hi,
Christina,
Matt.
hi, Christina. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you and your listeners.
Yes, and Christina is someone I'm very excited to have on the show because she not only talks the talk, but she walks the walk. And just to give you guys a little, just a little background about Christina. She is a seasoned entrepreneur, best-selling author, and IFBB professional bodybuilder with a master's degree in nutrition. Known for her resilience and reinvention, Christina has overcome significant challenges to build a life focused on wellness, personal growth, and helping others reach their full potential. She's the creator of the Serenity Sphere, a powerful tool designed to help individuals find balance and purpose. Christina's mission is to empower others to make room for what matters most in life. And again, one thing that I really admire about Christina is she not only has done all these great things, it really comes from her heart, and she really has a strong desire to help people.
Thank you.
And I think that this has been something that you've really lived and developed throughout your whole life.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
so
you don't realize it until you this would be the part where they say in our older years we're wise now.
yeah,
But I think it's only looking back that you can connect the dots and think, "Oh, that's why that happened. Okay, I understand. There's a
yeah.
purpose." Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about that. And tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know as a child, even as early as a child, you overcame some significant challenges and trauma, but you have truly learned and grown and been able to use these to help others. So,
Thank
tell
you.
us about your life experiences and what you've learned from them.
I'd say, you know, I part of it is I'm almost lucky. I think looking back now, I would lovingly say that I'm on my fourth life. My first, as you mentioned, but it's so interesting now is it's like as we comb through this planet and especially here in the US, my story doesn't seem so rare. And unfortunately, I grew up in a house where there was no food. My mom was an alcoholic on drugs and taken away at 7. But what's so funny about the start of my life is I didn't know any different. And I think that you can see folks now who are struggling with trauma where I really didn't realize that there wasn't food in the house. There wasn't anything for me to compare it to. And it really wasn't until now. I have a 20-year-old daughter who's following in my footsteps. Um, can I really look back and go, oh gosh, those things were not normal. Um, and so you'd asked me, you'd said, what is one of the reasons why I came to find coaching, and I really do live and empower it through my heart. When I first started coaching back in 2010, when I started my practice, one of my mentors at the time, we were struggling with because coaching is very, very difficult. It really needs to be a calling, almost like it's a calling to a higher power, because it's not just answering emails, it's not just answering the phone, it is showing up for people. And so to circle it back to my childhood, I think that if my mom had found someone like me, that maybe my story would be different. And and so I survived my 0 to 20, and I realized very early on that I couldn't trust people, but I could trust a system. And so I worked my way through school. I found ROTC in high school, which really was a saving grace because I didn't have a
Mhm.
family that I could rely on and count on. I had my grandfather, but I didn't live with him. And my sister and I were separated. She went to live with one aunt and uncle, and I went to live with another. And I got shingles at 15, and I still have the scars on my chest to as kind of a reminder. I spray tan them so that no one can, you can't see them, but they're still there. And it's within health and wellness, there's a great book that says the body keeps score, and it really does. Um, and so, I survived my first life, which was, the first 20 years. And then I got very lucky, and I was one of 8 women, if you can believe it, at a military academy. And to me, it didn't seem any different. It was a system that I learned, and I climbed through the ladder. And then once I got out of school, I spent the next almost 15 years in corporate America. And there was a crossroads in my life. At the time, I was managing almost $1 billion worth of capital acquisitions and third party contracting. All I knew how to do was shut out any interpersonal, any kind of higher calling, and just work. And I was really good at it because it was a system, it was a known entity to me. And I realized then after leaving corporate America that it was bleeding my soul. I it wasn't my purpose. It was putting money in my bank account, but money only gets you so far, said those that have it. Um, and so then I found myself running a startup, a beauty manufacturing company. And at the time, I was running this manufacturing company, and I was not in touch with my feminine side. I was still wearing this proverbial uniform, if you will, because when you can tuck things into a drawer, the rest of the house looks clean. And so I'd never really dealt with any of my internal struggles. And when I was running Evobella at the time, I needed an outlet. And I probably should have just gotten a divorce like normal people. But I found my way into competitive triathlons.
Hmm.
And again, another very extreme sport where I could basically I could see the path, keep my head down. I think I actually ran a whole half marathon almost with a dislocated hip. Like that's how strong the
Oh my
brain is.
gosh.
Yeah. And I didn't realize till I crossed the finish line. Um, but yeah, and then I found my way into bodybuilding because here I am running this beauty company, and I'm not even in touch with my own sense of beauty. And I fell into bodybuilding, and it allowed me an opportunity, a conduit. It sounds crazy, but if you think about it, was driving to the gym to hurt myself.
Wow.
Right? It was spiritually, emotionally, physically. You're driving there to really kind of face some demons and work through them. And so also getting help from a mental health standpoint. I've done a lot of therapy, obviously. Um, but I spent the next, from 2010 until 2019, kind of working through those demons. And I realized this is a gift that I want to not driving to the gym to hurt yourself, of course, but um, it's a gift because you really have to look at yourself, and you really have to, like an onion, peel back all the layers and work through them to get stronger in every aspect. And I'm very thankful for my experience. So, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that does seem really like 4 different lifetimes. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm curious to maybe kind of walk us through a couple of those transitions. You mentioned transitioning from high school to a military academy and being one of only 8 women. Which branch of service did you serve in?
So I went to a Merchant Marine Academy. I went to California Maritime Academy, and so the Merchant Marine Academy is a sub part of the Navy. And so then,
Okay.
as a part of that adjunct, I I was again a bit of an overachiever. Again, because what else was I going to do? I realized that if I wanted to not repeat the mistakes of those I'd seen in the past,
Yeah.
education and working hard seemed like the way out. Um, and so I also was part of the Navy Reserve. And so when I graduated from my undergrad, then I stayed in for another 7 years in the Navy Reserve, and then was also working for a container shipping company. And so um, the sea logistics, they're all in the family together. So
Wow, good for you. That is super
thank you.
impressive. So much respect for that. And then you transitioned into the corporate world after that. Did I hear that right?
Yeah,
What were you doing and how long did you say you were in the corporate world for?
almost 15 years.
Wow. And what were you
Yeah.
doing and what was that like for you?
People are like, how old is this lady?
I don't mean to,
Uh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's okay.
I
No, no,
wasn't
no.
going that
I'm
direction.
I'm 48 actually. I'm
No.
48. Yeah, so a lot has happened in all of these lives, and it's interesting because my daughter goes to the school now, and I after I unpacked her for her sophomore year, we stood up on the top of the hill, and I went, God, I haven't been here for almost 30 years. And it was just this.
Oh,
I know you have kids as well. And so imagine
yeah.
that. Yeah. Drink water and take care of yourself. And this will take care of you.
Yeah.
No,
Um,
what was your question again?
oh, well, I was just, curious what that was like for you in the corporate world, and then, ultimately, what was that like to transition from corporate world to being a life coach?
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. Um, I, as again, with the gift of wisdom, we each reach these phases in our life where the world or life or our circumstances kind of applies this pressure, like right before an earthquake, and we have a decision. And I feel so lucky that my natural instincts, which really came through childhood, if I'm being honest, you have to pivot because there's no choice. If you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he really talks about finding your calling and finding your purpose, and understanding at these pivotal moments how to adapt. And so, when I was transitioning out of school into, my first corporate job, and actually my first job at sea, um, you know, at that time, the only women that were working on these boats were the cooks. And I remember I was I was being driven, being picked up in the shipyard to my first ship I was going to be on, outside of school. And I remember that they were on the radio and they were like, "Oh, your boss is coming." And, they didn't realize I could hear everything that they were saying. And, so at the time, they actually thought that HR had hired me to see if they were going to sexually harass that if they were going to sexually harass me. So it's like
Oh my
such a really
gosh.
weird time. And so what I did was I just relied on who I was. And I remember going to the back deck one morning because they were all back there drinking coffee. And I thought, well, how come I'm not included? And I went back there and I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they said, "Oh, well, we don't want to offend you." And I said, "How could you offend me?" They were telling jokes.
Oh,
And so I mustered up my best, dirtiest joke that I could muster up to just basically be like, let's clear the air. We're all human beings here. We're here to do a job. And, the beautiful thing about being on the ship with them is that I think I gave them what felt like a little piece of home, because I really was one of the only women that was there. And especially being in a position of seniority, I had a choice. You can, as my old commander told me, you get a lot more with honey than you do with vinegar. And that was a lesson that I had to learn, sometimes the hard way. So, yeah, that transition from the military into corporate America, it was also hard because I was so used to charging as quickly as I could. And here I am surrounded by a bunch of old, sailors that are now come ashore and have, corporate jobs. And I remember my mentor at the time, his name is Micah Giglio. We call him Mo. And I remember he asked me, he said, "Why are you walking so fast around the office?" And I said, "Well, I'm important and I have things to do and places to go." And he said, "Let me tell you that I know that about you, and I know that you are very hard worker and you're very smart. But when you walk like that, you look disorganized, you look like you're always late, and you look like we've given you too much to do. And so it really, yeah, from a behavioral management standpoint, and it's something that all of these little nuggets of wisdom that have been bestowed upon me with my mentors through the years, I pass those on to the chief of staffs that I work with, to the senior executives, and my stay-at-home moms. These small behavior things that we learn or we think we're looking at that people don't realize our intention is one way and the way that our actions are perceived can be completely different. And so just to open up people's minds to see there's three sides to every experience.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've really been able to use all these different life experiences in your work as a life coach. So, tell us a little bit about your work as a life coach. I mean, first of all, that's not easy to do. I mean, how did you start doing that? Build up clients, and what type of work do you do with that?
Yeah, great question. I've been coaching so long that I find it sometimes a little difficult now. And I'm so happy that people are finding this industry because the world really does need they need more of us. They need more of the yous. They need more of the me's. Um, I didn't want to coach. At the time, I was running a startup and I had been running Evobella for 7 years and I was very stressed out. But then I started bodybuilding and a company had approached me and they wanted me to, I don't know, look after some athletes. And I said no. I was also competing, and competing is a very selfish sport because it has to be. And I remember that I was in a Max Muscle and I was sponsored by that company at the time. And this athlete, and she's kind of snarky to me. And, she was talking about hiring a posing coach. And I said, oh, well, I mean, it looks like you've figured everything out. And so she looked at me, and I think because I kind of pushed back a little bit, she said, I want you to coach me. And I said, no, 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 I'm not. I can't coach anyone. This is no. This isn't. I'd already told the company no. This is a no. And the barrier to entry was zero. Basically, I used to say I lovingly ran a rescue for humans. um, anyhow, and so she wouldn't take no for an answer. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll teach you what I know. And all of a sudden, I was running a team of 25 athletes. And I was also running a startup, which was very difficult. And I remember taking one of the athletes, I had a home office at the time. I remember taking one of the athletes, and we're looking in my bathroom mirror, this full length mirror. And I said, okay, we've created the perfect body now. How do you feel about your relationship with your mom? Oh, it's exactly this. It's true.
Right.
It's exactly the same. So, for all intents and purposes, I could snap my fingers and give you the body of your dreams. But if we don't do the work on the inside,
Yeah.
you won't keep it. And I was making monsters, people that we hadn't developed their heart and their calling and their life and their purpose. And then I was giving them this perfect body. And I thought, no, 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 no. I can't make bullies. No, no. So then I literally drove to Sacramento every day, took me almost 2 years. And that's when I studied behavioral management. And then, I'm the product of five of some of the best coaches in the world. But they were writing my meal plans like in pencil on the backs of pieces of paper. And I thought, this is wrong. And so then I went back to school and I got my master's in nutrition. And so it
Okay.
was that with the behavioral management is what we were calling it then, which is now life coaching. And I mean, now, when people work with me and, to talk about the Serenity Sphere, if you don't understand all of the pieces on how we nourish ourselves as human beings, when any one of these areas is out of balance, it's so natural that we look for coping mechanisms. And food is not only a very legal drug, they are touting its name, you know, from everything from um culturally how we show love to how we take care of our family. And I think that's really when the turn in my practice started. And it's the first story I share in my book, which really talks about this very confusing thing that we call food and nourishment. And the same way that we can be loving people can also be the way that we're making them sick and that we're giving them a mental health issue. And we have to really talk about, how do we nourish ourselves, not just through what we're eating.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I hear from you and that I noticed on your website and in your book is it's very comprehensive and it also comes from the heart. So
Thank
for
you.
yes, I mean, so for people who are looking for it, it's the 28-day runway, your pathway to a healthy lifestyle of your dreams. And that first story in your book that really caught my attention.
Thank you, Matt.
So I mean, if I remember this correctly, you were working with somebody with their nutrition and their eating, but then you actually met with her family at their
Yeah,
home to try to better understand the family dynamics and how that might be affecting like her mental health, cultural, emotional, behavioral. I mean, do you mind sharing a little bit about that story? What you did with that person?
yeah,
Because
I would love to. Um, at the time, just to give you a little backstory, if you were Jiminy Cricket in my pocket, I just had a major breakup. Like he packed while I was gone. So if you can think single mom, overnight needing to keep all the lights on now, dual income now, one income, like I said, single parent. And I thought, oh God, okay, well, I'm going to start a boot camp company. Again,
oh
relying
my.
on my skills, Okay, I'm going to start a boot camp company. And I went on Facebook and I said, I'm going to teach a boot camp. So I'm like doing nutrition, I'm coaching. And now Christina needs cash because I need to pay my bills. I
Yeah.
have I have a daughter to feed. And again, one of those pivotal moments where life squeezes you and you go, okay, skills, what are we going to do? Um, and so I started a boot camp. And at the time, I
How
didn't
did you
know.
get people how do you get people to sign up for a boot camp?
I literally went on Facebook and I tagged everyone. I was at the time living in a very small town called Petaluma, which
Yeah.
I love. And I went on Petaluma Facebook forums and I had a pretty decent sized following at the time. And I had a lot of folks that I had coached.
Okay.
And so, they spread the word. So I think let's say if um, I posted this boot camp on Monday. I had it filled and ready to go by Thursday morning. Like that is how fast this worked.
Wow.
And I think I had 10 people sign up, which was perfect. And it actually was one of the gals, she had been following me. And so to segue into her story, she was very quiet. Most of the time when I'm coaching folks, it's a very personalized relationship. I know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. And I'm like a vampire. If I'm not invited in that room, I don't go. I don't belong there. And so most of our conversations really were centered around her job and her meal times and the foods that she was going to eat and then what we were going to do at boot camp. um, and it was just after Thanksgiving and she came for her check-in and she was a totally different person. I could tell that she'd been crying, and so now she's sitting here in front of me, and I asked her if she was okay, and I also wanted to give her a sacred space that if she didn't want to go through this journey on this very personal side with me, that she felt safe, that we could meet another time. And she proceeded to share with me that she had just, had a Thanksgiving with her parents and with her brother and her sister. She had a younger sister still living in the house. And, what probably felt like you know, teasing when she was a kid. She realizes now as an adult, those are not teasing words. And it actually created a good deal of body dysmorphia that she had been working through privately. And she had never told anyone. And now she's watching her younger sister go through this same struggle. And she didn't know what to do with it. She felt helpless. And I hate to say it, this story, I mean, this is countless stories that I hear and that I see. And I'm sure that a lot of listeners, it really resonates with them. So I'm not outing anyone's private story. It's that this is way too common. And so in saying that, I started asking a lot more questions. And, she loves her family. She loves her mom and dad. And so as I'm trying to understand the dynamic of what's going on in the house, I asked her, I said, I know that you love your mom and dad. Do you think maybe it's just that they don't really understand food and the same things that she had learned with working with me? What if we could try to inspire this story to turn around and get her younger sister some support at the same time helping her mom and dad feel better? Because let's be real, hurt people. These are loving people that are probably tired. The food that they're eating is probably weighing them down. They don't feel good. They're not sleeping good. They're not drinking water, and so it's like, imagine that you are on this massive hike up Mount Kilimanjaro and you just feel like the weight of the world is on you. And that's probably what her whole family was feeling like. And if I could show up for them and maybe just comb through some very small things we could do from a food standpoint, then maybe we could add in a little bit more support for her sister and help the whole family feel better. And so I got a babysitter, and I literally was driving this beat up Chevy pickup truck that, like, if you didn't have the radio on, the window didn't roll down because the wiring was bad. And I drove to Santa Rosa, and in my broken Spanish, sat down with this family, and these are good people. They didn't know any better. And so in the end, we got the brother we got the brother to do the grocery shopping. And I got to help with some really simple recipes that both honored, their Mexican heritage and their culture, but took out some of the fats, and some of the things that were weighing them down, and just try to inspire them, to just live a little bit more balanced. And then talk to the younger daughter about, what food is at school. Can we make our lunches? Things like that, so that she knew that she had some love and some support in her corner, because this is a good family that just really needed help.
So that's great. It wasn't just like working with them on the surface level of like, this is what you need to do to, change your diet. It's more like, how's your family, how's your culture, how your self-beliefs, how your views about yourself, all of that affecting you.
It's everything, because food is the easy part. The
Yeah.
challenge is information is everywhere. It's understanding what makes each person and their situation unique. It's like me telling you to drink more water. Okay, how? How do I do
Right.
this?
Yeah.
And then how do I make it consistent and part of everything that I do? That's really where the life coaching and the experience comes in, because everyone has a smartphone these days. People are constantly being told what to do, but what they're not understanding is that not each of these pieces will work for them, and then why. And you have to honor their culture. We culturally show each other love through food, and if we don't learn how to do both and then how to apply it to your lifestyle and your schedule, it will be a series of stop starts. And Matt, my worry is that people try all of these fads trying to figure out what is right for me, and then they ultimately just give up because one little piece of it was missing. And so when I came home that night, I realized, at the time my book was just um an ebook. I didn't I really was just kind of starting it very simply, and I realized I need to help a lot more people and I need to hurry up because this story is becoming all too common. And it's not good enough that I'm just helping the mom. Because you know what I was seeing in the family dynamic was, you know, I'm helping the mom or the dad learn about what food is good for them, but then they're not able to make time for the rest of the family. So then, you know what I did is I took away this thing that was showing everyone love by alienating the mom or alienating the dad. You have to include everyone
Yeah.
because you'll create a divide in the house. And then now it becomes, oh, that's mom's food or that's just for dad. And already that creates a separation. And as families, we're already separating ourselves enough and we have to bring it back.
Yeah, and I mean, how much of your work was influenced by your some of your life experiences, growing up as a child and with your family?
Oh gosh. It's probably a what not to do.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy though is, and I, I talk to other folks, that have an upbringing of trauma. We really didn't always know that it wasn't normal. I actually thought I was lucky, if you can believe it or not. I mean, imagine that you're a 9-year-old kid and you get to go in the cupboard and you get to take a sandwich bag and you get to put as many tablespoons of powdered sugar as you want. I mean, I think that would be every kid's dream, right? No one's babysitting you, no one's watching over you. I used to take those. I don't know if you had these when you were a kid, but those concentrated juices. I mean, with food stamps, that's basically what you buy. That powdered milk, um, Kraft macaroni and cheese, but not the Kraft, but whatever the like grocery store box was. And then those grocery store bags of like fake Fruit Loops.
Yeah.
Um, it was all sugar, all processed. But as a kid, I didn't know any better. I remember it wasn't until I was in the 6th grade and we'd made friends with the neighbors. And at this time, I was living in a trailer and could only wash our clothes maybe once a week. And I know that sounds so crazy, but I remember the neighbor, they had a pool because our trailer basically was on a property. And I remember going into their kitchen and they had this huge thing of granola. And I just remember thinking, like, these people are rich. Look at all this food.
Yeah.
I remember asking her, did they just leave this out? How crazy does that sound? I mean, yeah. But again, it was the norm that I knew. And I didn't realize there's anything wrong with it,
Yeah.
And obviously until now, I'd be mortified to raise my daughter like that. But, you know, yeah, we have to try to. That's actually why I wrote the book in the way that I wrote it is because I'm not doing rocket science. Yes, it's years and years and years of education, but once you understand your body composition and you can understand like what foods your body loves, I want a blueprint for nutrition to be free and to be available to everyone because maybe then people will feel better.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your book because I do like the way that it's written. It's very organized. So I mean, tell us about that format and why you wrote it that way.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Um, so the 28-day runway really is just that. I wanted to give folks a blueprint that they could very simply, it's not easy, but it is simple, that every single day you could give them a single health call to action. And so what I did was, and actually the book kind of wrote itself. Like I said, it first started, it took me 6 years to write this book because it's such nothing happens in a vacuum. I had to write a little bit and then set it down. Um, but what it started to unfold as the pinnacles of health, first and foremost, is sleep. I quote a doctor friend of mine in the book, and I love this quote. He says, "Sleep is the single most important cornerstone of health." And no exercise program and no nutrition plan can make up for its absence. So the first thing I work on is, what time are we going to go to bed to make sure that we can get a good night's sleep? Does it sound so silly, right?
Yeah, it does. No, but it does, and I'm sure you hear this a lot from either your clients. What do you say to people like, I just don't have I don't have time to sleep. All right, I can only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. I mean, how do you deal with people with the time constraints?
Yeah, that's a great question. So no one is that busy. I've coached law enforcement that run a 24-hour clock, nurses. I have yet to find, out of the thousands of people that I have helped, I have yet to find a single human being. The body can't operate like that. And so once you start, it sleep night might not be where you start, but it is where we will end up going. And so you have to first see where this one human being will allow you to influence their life. And so if someone is
Mm,
leading with, I only have 4 hours, okay, well, let's not start there. How about this? Let's start with drinking water.
yeah.
Because if you're awake for 20 hours, we could get in some water, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the first thing is you have to listen and you have to get to know them and understand, okay, where's the first place they will allow me to influence positive change?
Hmm.
And so actually if you think about the Serenity Sphere, the assessment, part of what I love about it is that it tells you right away, oh, here's the two areas you're really out of balance. And so from a coaching standpoint, then I get to say, okay, I could easily inspire a little positive movement in this one thing that is just a pain in their butt and they're really unhappy about it. And a body in motion stays in motion. So for my folks that are saying, oh, I only have 4 hours, okay. Um, we won't start there. And then once they start feeling better, they start realizing, wow, if I'm going to drink all this water, I need to make a little bit more time to do this. And then they actually instantly start feeling better. And then they're like, wow, I do have more energy. Well, what about this food thing? Let's talk about that. Oh, you want to keep going? Okay, well, and then we just start marching up this little hill. And there's a little backslide, and then there's a little push. But because there's some really easy wins in the area that they really were struggling with the most, it starts to build this relationship of trust and accountability. And most of the time, they don't want to let me down, right? They'll let themselves down,
Yeah.
but I show up for them. And accountability is probably 99% of any of my success stories because they
Hmm.
know, man, she's gonna ask
I
me.
know.
Oh
Yeah.
no, And
Yes.
then they're gonna be like, I better just go do it right now because I don't want to. And that's the relationship part, right?
Yes, I'm a therapist and I've heard similar things. People are like, I didn't want to come back and tell you that I did this or that I did that, so I didn't, and I heard your voice.
Right.
And yeah, it's
It's a good voice.
yeah, it is. And also want to go back to the Serenity Sphere because I think this is really cool. I mean, so I'm sure Christina will explain this more, but it's like when you go to her website, you take the Serenity Sphere, which has these different areas of your life that tells you how you're doing in them. So fill in the pieces. What are the different areas of the life? What are the different areas of the Serenity Sphere, and how do you use this in your coaching?
And that's a great question. So the philosophy of the Serenity Sphere is off of the circle of life. And so I went to school in New York, and they when I was going through, it took me 2 years to finish before sitting for my boards. They talk about this circle of influence, and it goes through these 12 key areas of your life, from your finances to community to spirituality to joy. Like, when's the last time you had joy in your life? Um, your your love life, nutrition, physical movement. And so what they did was they were like, oh, here's the areas where we nourish ourselves. And I thought, that's great. But most people cannot self-diagnose where they're really stuck, right? And so then what I did was, after all of my experience with coaching, I looked at these areas and I thought, okay, well, which ones do I think we should highlight to give awareness? What do I think that most human beings will gravitate wanting to learn more about their lives? And so the Serenity Sphere is my take on these areas. So for example, they don't really look at love, right? But having love or romance in your life, or finding that partner, no man should live on an island, so to speak, right? And so it took me 2.5 years to create this assessment. Once I had the areas I wanted to focus on, coming up with questions that you cannot be Mother Teresa. And even if you try, you'd have to flat out lie. Um, to really ask the folks, like what's really going on. So, for example, one of the areas is, and these questions have evolved over time as I get feedback and as I learn, because I am still trying to paint a somewhat broad brushstroke. The Serenity Sphere is for you to learn, but it's also a tool for me to learn and to ask more in-depth questions as we work together. But health, for example, is one of the key areas. And it was really important to me to get to folks, how often is what you say is important about your health actually what you're doing about it, right? And so it's essentially, 100 of these questions all aimed at trying to uncover what's really going on. And you'd be really surprised where people thought, honestly, it could be a little triggering for them. I watched my husband Aaron, who is always my guinea pig, and I watched him take the test, and there was one of the areas where I don't want to take this test anymore. And I went, oh, well, what's happening? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, oh, well, we struck a nerve. So obviously maybe we should talk about this area. And obviously I'm not his coach. I'm going to say his wife, but through the process of feeling uncomfortable lies an opportunity for us to dig a little bit deeper. And when you've come back into a neutral state, let's talk about how we can inspire some positive change. For example, I see wealth as a common reoccurring theme for folks, where money troubles. But then when you start to understand, sometimes it's just their mindset around money that's actually really affecting them. So, for example, I had one client and she had plenty of money. Her rent was like, let's say $2,000. And she was cashing checks of like 15 grand, 20 grand. She just hadn't done billing, so we need to make time for billing and then get some IT support because her system wasn't always functioning. But as soon as we started rolling that money in, she wasn't any happier. And so then it comes out, through our talking about it. Well, you are saving well on into the future. Where's this coming from?
Huh.
Turns out, it was an old attached memory from childhood when the lights got turned off and
Hmm.
they would lock the door because, the bill collectors was coming. Honey, do you know how much money you have in the bank right now?
Yeah.
We could move, we could buy shoes, we could get help, we
Yeah.
could get an assistant. But it really was trying to uncover, like, why are we still seeing ourselves as the 7-year-old little girl who was running upstairs because we were afraid of the door getting knocked on? Are we that 7-year-old girl anymore? No. Okay, well, then let's take this really strong version of you and let's go pick up that 7-year-old girl and let's bring her into present day and make her feel safe because you're doing a good job. And, obviously we're still working through some money mindset stuff, but, you know, that was a huge leap and bound, and it really wasn't about the money.
Yeah,
You know?
so again, one thing I hear is like trying to get to the core, like their heart, who they really are, and bring that really out to the surface.
Yeah.
Um, and another, yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, and I was going to say, and just inspire movement. Sometimes it's like you're drowning at the bottom of a dirty laundry pile. They can't see out. And you'll see a lot of examples of this when people get stuck with anxiety. They're looking at this list of things to do and they become paralyzed. And, it's another benefit, the way that I wrote the book, for example, that you literally, go to day 3, just do what's on day 3. Do not take on any more work. We're just going to do these 3 things. And so when you give people actionable, simple calls to action, they can hopefully, come out of this laundry pile, if you will, so that they can breathe. And a lot of folks getting stuck is they've kind of found themselves, life has been piling on and they need someone to reach down a hand and try to lift them out, you know.
Yeah, and I like how comprehensive it is. And another thing that you had talked about earlier is trying to help people connect with their purpose, their higher power, sense of spirituality. I mean, would you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what does that mean to you, and how do you help people connect with that?
It's a great question. And this is actually one that I find, and I'm so glad, because to be honest, without the Serenity Sphere, it's really not something that people even give light to. Unless they're part of organized religion, they don't even know to make space for it sometimes. And there's so many different ways that, I mean, look at your spiritual blog, that people can really connect with a higher calling. If you don't have this in your life, we're almost no longer passing down traditions and a cadence, uh, even a nomenclature is being lost because of social media. We're being dragged into so many areas. And for so many centuries, organized religion was the way to bring people together. And so when I look at the Serenity Sphere, I had to be very, very mindful around the wording, because far be it from me to shove someone into one box or another. However, you can find your higher calling. It's actually why I'm so thankful to be on with you today, because when I just looked at someone that's doing another podcast, and it was like a 0 ranking, and it matters. Our sense of purpose and why we're waking up every morning. It's not our jobs. It is our family, but it's all together, and what holds us to being the best version of ourselves is a point of spirituality. And you can fill your life with love and with community and with amazing food and physical activity, but if something is a wound in there, or something is a gap, in the absence of nothing, people will try to fill it with something. And that's usually when we see folks lost and searching and trying to escape. We see all these different kinds of therapies, ketamine therapy, all of these different kinds. And I'm like, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
I always ask folks, like when we're talking about supplements, what made you buy this? Oh, vitamin D, what
Yeah.
what made you look for this gut health probiotic? Oh, I don't know. I saw it on TikTok. Do we need a gut health probiotic? Let's have another
Right.
conversation. But when it comes to spirituality, it's in my experience, in the absence of something, people will try to fill it. And at the very least, trying to open the dialogue. And whether that's them meditating, whether it's taking a mindful cup of coffee and creating a bubble around them, whether it is organized religion, whether it's a walkabout, a Machu Picchu, whatever this is that is this driving force inside of you. It, like I said, I'm so thankful that it made its way into my mind, because I think that people sometimes, if they don't have it, they don't realize they don't have it. And there's a very deep sense of lack. They just don't, they try to fill it with other things and they don't realize, oh,
Yeah.
it was this one.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is that spirituality gives people a sense of wholeness and connection. And I'm curious, in your work as a life coach, have you found that people who have a sense of spirituality or higher calling or higher purpose, do they find greater happiness and satisfaction when they reach their goals compared to people who don't have a spirituality and reach their goals? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think every one of the pieces of the pie is important, but there are some that I believe have a more of a gas pedal, if you will,
Yeah.
more of an ambition push or a pull. And spirituality is definitely one of the spirituality and love.
Mm.
And the reason I put them probably equal is because spirituality, in my experience, is the love for the greater good, the greater calling, the greater purpose, the greater meaning. And, without that love, there's a gap. Now, whether they're ready to cross that bridge just yet, like I said earlier, I am a vampire. If I'm not invited in a room, I stay out.
Yeah.
But ultimately, over our work together, I do find them making room to be curious. And curiosity is the launch pad of anything any of us will do in a positive direction, is to be curious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, I think, motivator. That's actually when people come to me and they're like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what to do with my life. And I don't know what to do. I'm like, my first question is like, well, what are you curious about? Like, let's
Yeah.
just start there. And
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter, whatever you're curious about, you can find out more information about it. It's a good starting point.
Yeah, I love that word because it's so relevant
Yeah,
in every relationship, including the one with ourselves,
right.
right?
Yeah.
If you look at a child and you think about the in therapy or in coaching, we would say, like, try to adopt a beginner's mind, right? Approaching each situation with a clean slate so
Yeah.
that we can learn. But it
Right.
really stems from curiosity,
Yeah.
and especially with our partners and our loved ones, right? Is, yeah, this sense of a young mind and at play. Right. Yeah. I'll reference it again. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about these three archetypes, and in the finding your purpose and your calling, it's the reason we keep going. It's, are you familiar with him as an author, or as a
Y-
predecessor to Sigmund Freud?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's the founder of existential
Yeah.
psychotherapy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and his life story is really inspiring too. I mean, he spent time in a Nazi concentration camp, and that's is very inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that it is so inspiring, and I love to bring the awareness to folks, because if he can survive that, if you
Yeah.
can survive your story, if I can survive my story, then there's hope. Right?
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I mean, I have if I have clients who they're dealing with some sense of unfairness or injustice, or just like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
If I feel if I feel like they're open and receptive, I'm like, hey, have you heard of Viktor Frankl? Like, you should read his book. And
Yeah.
it doesn't resonate with everyone, but it certainly has
No.
resonated with me.
I asked one of my best friends at the time, I was like, if you want to understand me more, this is a wonderful book.
Yeah,
And he couldn't make it through. But the reason why I recommend it is because folks that are overcoming trauma and have survived trauma,
yeah,
I completely lack the articulate ability to be able to put you back in my shoes if you've never seen any kind of a version of my story before. I can't explain it to you. And I not only does he acknowledge that, but he explains it so well that it resonates. And even just a little bit of awareness can inspire movement. And that's really what we're trying to do, right?
absolutely. Yeah, I read his book at a time in my life when I felt like there was someone treating me, well, I didn't feel like someone was treating me very unfairly and unjustly. And I remember thinking, like you said, okay, what I'm going through is nowhere near as difficult as what he went through. And if he can find meaning and purpose in that, even when it doesn't make sense, then yeah, I can
Right.
find some meaning and purpose in what I'm going through, even though I don't understand why it's happening. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's one of it's yeah, he's outstanding, I think. um yeah, well, that's really powerful. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot tonight. Was there is there any area or any topic that we didn't get to that you feel like is important for people to know?
I think one of the most important things I just want people to realize is we all have a story and we all have our version of our experiences and our truths. And no matter what people are working through, if you can try to change your mindset to search for answers rather than reasons,
Yeah.
it can completely shift where you're focusing your time. And I live in downtown San Francisco, and we're very humanistic minded. We really do believe that everyone at every level deserves the same love and respect, and we're all humans. I will share, if you were a kid next to me in school, we all had a choice, and people have to remember that. You have to remember that thoughts become things, and your time and where you're focusing your energy really do matter. And we had the same books in school, going home, and even though my story is one of extremes, um you have an opportunity at any point right now listening to this, that you can make a different decision. And if you can just decide, you really will uncover that there hopefully are a lot of folks like me and like Matt that really want to inspire just a little bit of positive movement in that direction, so that, I'm telling you, maybe you won't make it on the moon, I don't know, but you really can have anything you want in life, but you have to decide. And we use a philosophy called crowding out. And because there's no perfection, but if you can try to just make a little bit more time for the things that are serving you and a little less time for the things that aren't, you'll be pleasantly surprised your life starts to take up speed in the direction towards your dreams. And I really do believe that you can have everything.
That's really beautiful. And if people want to connect with you, I know there's different ways to, I mean, first there's the Serenity Sphere. If people want to take that, where can they take that?
Everything is on my website, and I believe in this name. It is imaginewhaticanbe.com.
Oh, great,
And
great.
again, you really can have everything that you want. My You can also get a copy of my book through my website, and just to show that I don't just it's not a do as I say, not as I do. I became a professional athlete in my 30s. I didn't grow up with trophies or with medals or awards, but I set my mind to it, and anything that you want, you can achieve. And even now, my husband and I are both international DJs. If your hands work and you have access to the internet, you really can learn anything you want. You just have to find the courage to just keep going through the parts that feel like a struggle.
Well, Christina, thank you for sharing your journey with us and your wisdom. It's very inspiring. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Matt. And to your listeners, I appreciate you.